Hello everybody, Dr. Talia Marcheggiani here, and today I'm going to tell you guys how to impact all different kinds of health markers by feeding your gut bacteria. So about 5 pounds of gut bacteria live inside of us, and they outnumber the cells in our body 10 to 1. That means that we're 10 times more bacteria than we are cells. The bugs in our gut produce different vitamins, such as the B vitamins, vitamin K, vitamin D, iron. They also break down the indigestible fibers from our diet and feed our gut cells by producing a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate. They also help balance our immune system. So if you've listened to other lectures of mine, you know that I always talk about the gut-brain connection. So the gut and the brain are connected via the vagus nerve, and our gut is the seat of our health and inflammation, and our brain is very susceptible to even low levels of inflammation in the body. When we have a dysbiosis situation going on, so we have more bad bacteria living in our guts than the good bacteria that are giving us vitamins and nutrients, there's a toxin called lipopolysaccharide that gets produced. This gets produced by gram-negative bacteria, such as E. coli in the gut. Lipopolysaccharide, or LPS, is an excitotoxin. So when it's injected into rats, it caused anxiety and depression, like anhedonia and low mood. Even a single round of antibiotics that can upset the balance of our gut bacteria can induce depression in some individuals. When fecal matter was transplanted from depressed humans into rats, it caused symptoms similar to depression in those animals. Our gut bacteria also produce neurotransmitters like GABA and serotonin, which help calm anxiety and elevate mood. Serotonin is our happy hormone, makes us feel feelings of well-being and satisfaction, whereas GABA is an anxiolytic neurotransmitter, an inhibitory neurotransmitter that helps calm the mind and body down. Our gut bacteria also help with stress management. They actually lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone that's involved in aging and actually is very damaging when it's in high levels in our body. When germ-free rats, so these are mice with zero gut bacteria, were analyzed, they found that they had really high levels of cortisol in their blood. When they were given bifidobacteria, a good beneficial kind of gut bacteria, their cortisol levels dropped, and so did their levels of anxiety. So lipopolysaccharide is produced by the bad gut bacteria, such as E. coli, certain strains of E. coli that are pathogenic. We can increase levels of LPS by binge drinking, using certain medications, overdoing it with antibiotics, and eating a lot of crappy high sugar foods in our diet. When people have high levels of LPS in their bodies, they have lower insulin sensitivity, putting them at risk for diabetes and weight gain. They had way more levels of inflammation, and they had worse digestion. So they had a condition called leaky gut, which actually exacerbates inflammation. So LPS causes inflammation, which causes gut inflammation, which causes further LPS secretion. So it becomes this vicious circle of inflammation and feeling terrible. We know that inflammation is a huge biomarker for doing poorly as you age. So centenarians and semi-supercentenarians, so these are people that live to over 100 and 105 years old, their ability to stay healthy in their old age was predicted by how low their levels of inflammation were. We also know that inflammation is connected with depression and anxiety and even other mental health conditions. Injecting rats with LPS induces depressive behavior, and it also alters something called the tryptophan kynurenine pathway. Tryptophan is an amino acid, and it can go in either one of two directions. It's sort of like at this crossroads where it can be turned into serotonin, our happy hormone, or it can be turned into something called kynurenine, or quinolinic acid, or kynuric acid. These are more inflammatory compounds. And the enzyme that turns tryptophan into quinolinic acid is induced by high levels of inflammation in the body. We're not sure why the body does this. It could be that during times of sickness, which usually results in high levels of inflammation, we evolve to sort of turn inwards, become quieter, take in less food, require more sleep. And so this is sort of a protective mechanism. However, if we're not chronically ill, if we're not sick, and we're stuck in this sort of depressive, inflammatory pathway, we don't want to activate this tryptophan kynurenine pathway because we're stealing serotonin from our body and we're further inducing inflammation and causing symptoms of depression. So mice that had this tryptophan kynurenine pathway activated actually exhibited more symptoms of depression and had higher levels of inflammation, leading to more depression. See how this cycles? Butyrate, on the other hand, which is produced by good gut bacteria. So butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid that they create by breaking down the indigestible fibers that would otherwise pass through our digestive system undigested. is very anti-inflammatory. So first of all, it feeds our gut cells. So it heals the actual cells in the gut that are absorbing our food. It helps prevent leaky gut. So it actually keeps our gut cells together and maintains that gut integrity. It reduces our ability to absorb lipopolysaccharide or LPS. So it actually, even if we are producing some levels of LPS, it prevents them from getting into the rest of the body. It increases mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the furnaces of our cells. Those are what produce energy for our cells. They're actually very anti-inflammatory when those pathways are activated. It increases something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a growth factor involved in producing new neurons in the hippocampus, which has been associated with lower levels of inflammation, more stress resilience, and lower levels of depression and better outcomes in people who suffer from mental health conditions. So how do we feed our gut? This is a huge area of medicine right now. This is where a lot of research is going into. And there are some things we can do to promote a good, healthy gut bacteria balance, lower inflammation, improve our digestion, improve our ability to age, improve our skin health, improve our mood, improve our cortisol curve and our ability to deal with stress, actually even improve our circadian rhythms, sleep more deeply, manage our immune system. So there's like all of these different pathways that begin in the gut. As Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. So how we can really impact our gut is by feeding it properly. So the gut needs 4 different things. It needs probiotics, prebiotics, including resistant starches, and polyphenols. So probiotics can either be obtained from food or from supplementation. There's a lot of research showing that food-sourced probiotics are superior to supplement. When we're taking something like kefir, the probiotics are living inside of their fuel source, so they're more likely to survive the transit from our mouth all the way into our colon, where most of them want to take up residence. Probiotics are composed of either bifidobacteria strains or lactobacillus strains. There's hundreds of different strains that we've isolated. And they're all studied for specific purposes right now in the literature. So, for example, Lactobacillus helveticus and Bifidobacteria longum together have been shown to be a successful remedy for managing anxiety. There's some research to show that the more fermented foods people consume, the less social anxiety they had, and better mood, better butyrate production, and better gut diversity, which means more strains of those beneficial Bifidobacteria and Lactobacilli strains. You can get fermented foods from things like sauerkraut and yogurt and kimchi, kombucha, and miso tempeh. But you have to be very careful because a lot of store-bought variations of these foods don't have existing bacteria living in them. So a lot of sauerkrauts are treated with sulfites and they've been boiled in the canning process. A lot of yogurts are very, very high in sugar and like other kind of crappy food additives. So you have to be very careful with the kind of foods that you're taking in. I prefer kefir. There's some research to show that it's superior to a probiotic supplement. It contains around 10 to 12 different strains of bacteria, and kefir is made by adding different grains of probiotics to milk and fermenting it. If you're lactose intolerant, you probably can tolerate kefir because the lactose sugars have been broken down, so people who are lactose intolerant can usually take it. If you have a sensitivity to dairy and you don't tolerate dairy very well, then there are some ways that you can make coconut kefir or just use kefir water, and I can show you that in another video soon. Secondly, we need to be feeding our gut bacteria with prebiotics. So prebiotics are essentially fibers. These are fibers that our gut cells can't digest, but our gut bacteria can digest. So these fibers travel all the way down into our colon, where our gut bacteria break them down, producing butyrate and all of the other vitamins that we need, like the B vitamins, vitamin K, and all of those other kinds of things. Prebiotics are essentially in any food that contains fiber. So your fruits, your vegetables, your legumes, your nuts, your seeds, your whole grains. But foods that are particularly high in prebiotics are things like Jerusalem artichokes, chicory, dandelion greens, onion, garlic, leeks, asparagus, apple pectin, GOS, which stands for galactoligosaccharide, which is a kind of sugar, and legumes like black beans. A very specific kind of prebiotic is something called resistant starch. So this is a relatively new area of research. These are starches that escape human digestion. Although they're not particularly fibrous, we can't break them down. So they travel all the way down into our colon, and our gut bacteria love them. So they break them down, they munch hungrily on them, and they produce all kinds of great anti-inflammatory products for us, and they help benefit our mood. There's some research to show that resistant starches actually lower our insulin resistance, so they're really helpful for someone with diabetes, and they're really helpful for weight management. You have to be really careful with introducing them into your diet though, because if you introduce a bunch all at once, it can cause a lot of gas and bloating as our gut gets used to it. So exercise caution when you introduce some resistant starches into your food. Resistant starches, I love them because they're so easy to get into your diet. So they're things like potato starch, so not to be confused by potato flour, green bananas, and any kind of starchy foods that have been cooked and then cooled. So white rice that you've cooked and then cooled off in your fridge or at room temperature, or potatoes that you've cooked and then cooled, or legumes like black beans and lentils that you've cooked and cooled. So think things like sushi, potato salad, or you can cook up a big batch of rice, store it in your fridge, and just have a couple tablespoons every time you walk by your fridge. Finally, our gut needs polyphenols. So polyphenols are foods that are very rich in antioxidants. They increase the diversity of the gut, so they increase the amount of bifidobacteria and lactobacilli that exist in our gut. There's some studies that show that foods that are rich in polyphenols, so chocolate is one. So cocoa powder actually reduced C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation in the body. And green tea, it's a lot though, you have to have about 5 or 6 cups of green tea a day, improved gut diversity, which is something really that we want because that's increasing the amount of good bacteria in our gut. So other polyphenols are red wine, black tea, I already mentioned green tea, I mentioned cocoa powder, and all of your fruits and vegetables. So things like berries are very high in polyphenols. What do you need for this gut healing smoothie? So one thing that I do with my patients when I'm trying to promote good gut balance for them is I recommend a smoothie that you can do in the morning as a meal substitute. So this can be for breakfast. So this gut healing smoothie is you can either have it as a snack, using just a little bit of each food, or as a meal replacement. So I often encourage patients to start off their day with this gut healing smoothie and do this for a couple of weeks every single day, and then watch the health results that they get. So for this smoothie, you need a few things you can find in your grocery store or health food store. The first thing is you need to find kefir. So here I'm using Pine Hedge Farms organic kefir. So I really like this kind. I always recommend that people go for plain kefir, so no sugar added. We're going to add lots of good flavors to the smoothie. Plain kefir, as high milk fat as you can find, so usually 2% or higher, and organic is always good. So I also recommend a brand called Liberté Kefir. If you're dairy sensitive, then you can try coconut kefir or kefir water, and in another video I'll explain how to make those, but essentially you just buy a kefir starter off of Amazon and follow the directions, which is pretty simple. You add kefir grains to coconut milk, let it sit for 12 to 18 hours, and then it's ready to consume. So in this smoothie, if someone's having a meal, I'll tell them to put in a whole cup of kefir, right? Because a meal requires there to be a certain amount of protein and a certain amount of fat. And so the kefir is going to be the bulk of those nutrients for us. But today, because I'm only having a snack, I'm going to add just a couple tablespoons. Next up for our prebiotic fiber is ground flaxseed. So I'm a huge fan of ground flaxseed, not only because it's a good fiber and it helps just increase bulk for stools and regular and healthy bowel movements, as well as balancing cholesterol levels and blood sugar levels, but flaxseed also contains phytoestrogens, so they help balance our estrogen levels. If we have too much estrogen in the body, flaxseed inhibits the estrogen binding, and it's a weak estrogen, so it actually lowers the estrogenic effects. So if you have symptoms of estrogen dominance, like painful heavy periods, acne, irregular periods, if you're worried about your predisposition to breast cancer, endometriosis, or fibroids, then flaxseed is a really great addition to balance out your estrogen levels. Or if your estrogen levels are low, such as you're experiencing amenorrhea, absent periods, or if you're going through menopause, especially women that are transitioning into menopause and experiencing those hot flash symptoms or weight gain or those perimenopause symptoms, then flaxseed is a great addition to your diet. So I always recommend 2 tablespoons of ground flax a day. You want to grind it because when it's in seed form, we're not accessing those phytoestrogens and the oils in the flax. You want to store it in your fridge too because it can go rancid at room temperature. So 2 big tablespoons ground flaxseed. That gives us some prebiotic fiber, some phytoestrogens, some good taste. Next up, I'm going to add gelatin. So I didn't talk about gelatin, but gelatin is from the connective tissue of animals. So it's ground up bones, joints, skin. Gelatin is composed mainly of collagen, which is a protein, and most of our structural protein in our body, 30%, consists of collagen. So when we consume collagen, not only are we getting a good amount of protein, which is just adding more protein to our smoothie to maintain blood sugar levels, to keep us full for longer. So this is great if you're making this a meal, but we're also increasing that structure. So some studies that found that it was uptaken completely. So when you eat collagen, it gets taken up in its whole form, partially, and the other part gets broken down. But this goes straight into our skin and our hair and our joints and helps manage cellulite. And it goes into our gut cells as well and maintains those tight junctions to prevent leaky gut and to keep our gut integrity solid. So I add 2 tablespoons of gelatin. It doesn't have a taste, doesn't have an odor. You don't really notice in your smoothie. Another thing I really like about collagen or gelatin is it's made up of 2 amino acids, so glycine and proline. Glycine is an amino acid that helps manage our immune system. So if your immune system is hyperactive, so you have more autoimmune conditions, glycine helps calm that immune reactivity. If your immune system is hypoactive, it can help balance your immune system and increase immunity, helping you fight off infections like viral and bacterial infections. And glycine is also a neurotransmitter in the brain, so it helps calm things down. If you're feeling more anxious and inflamed, glycine can help calm you down. So it's a great remedy for anxiety, and it's great to do before bed to help calm the nervous system down. Next up is potato starch. So not to be confused with potato flour, potato starch is a resistant starch. You can find it, all of these ingredients you can find at Bulk Barn or a food store. And I'm just gonna add a tiny amount. So I'm used to resistant starches because I've been adding them to my diet a bit more. But so you want to eventually work up to 1 or 2 tablespoons, but you're going to start with a tiny amount, like a 1/4 teaspoon, and then slowly work up as your gut adjusts to it. Your gut bacteria will love you for this. Next up is cocoa powders. This is raw cacao powder that I got from Mexico. You can get it at a health food store. You can just use cocoa powder. I'm going to put 2 heaping tablespoons in. So cocoa powder, not only is it delicious and basically we're going to be drinking like a chocolate milkshake, but cocoa powder is full of polyphenols, which are improving our gut diversity, healing our gut cells, giving us lots of antioxidants, decreasing inflammation. And then finally, I'm going to add a banana. So if you're daring and you want to have a green banana, that would up your resistant starch intake. But I'm just adding a banana today for sweetness. Bananas have a little bit of fiber. And, just for taste. But other things you can add are frozen cherries or berries. You can add some other things like apple pectin. Today I'm going to add a scoop of Dandy Blend, which is a mix of roasted chicory root and dandelion greens. So all of those kind of prebiotic fibers and probiotic fibers you can throw into your smoothie to up the gut healing properties. So this is Dandy Blend. It's like a coffee substitute made of dandelion and chicory. It's gluten-free. Finally, for liquid, I'm just going to add 1 or 2 cups of water. So the more water you add, the more watery your smoothie. You want to make sure that you drink lots of water after having your smoothie because flax requires, it absorbs water, so it requires more water to be able to transit through the gut and help with constipation. If you're experiencing more diarrhea, you want to drink less water with your flax and it'll help create more bulk. You can also use things like almond milk or coconut milk if you want to increase the fat content or flavor. So you throw everything into a blender, blend it up. It's pretty good. So you don't want to leave this too long. You want to consume it in a reasonably quick amount of time because the fibers are going to gel up and make it kind of chunky. And yeah, so have your whole smoothie every morning for a couple of weeks as a breakfast substitute. Not only are you going to be getting way more protein in the morning and good healthy fats, but you're going to be getting tons of prebiotic fibers, probiotics, polyphenols, resistant starches to feed your gut bacteria. So pay attention as you do this experiment to your hunger and cravings, and especially your sugar cravings, because as we improve our gut bacteria profile, our sugar cravings should go down. Pay attention to your skin and your mood and your stress levels and how deeply that you're sleeping. Pay attention to your digestion. So you might be a little bit bloated initially as you add these fibers into your diet, but pay attention to how your gut is feeling overall, how your bowel movements are and the ease of your bowel movements and the regularity. Pay attention to your mental quality because we know, and mental clarity, because we know that there's a connection between our gut bacteria and cognition and it's their ability to actually decrease symptoms of Alzheimer's disease and dementia as we age. Pay attention to your weight because, even adding more fiber in the morning and improving your metabolism in the morning will be beneficial to your weight, in addition to gut bacteria, which in some studies show are able to benefit and reduce obesity and prevent obesity. So there was a study showing that when you look at the DNA of your gut bacteria, it's 90% predictive of whether you're obese or not. And in contrast, your actual DNA in your body is only 50% predictive. So your gut bacteria is way more predictive of whether or not you're going to be obese than your actual physical DNA that you inherit from your parents. Pretty cool. Tastes pretty good. Tastes like a chocolate smoothie. So try this out for yourself. Tell me how it goes. My name is Dr. Talia Marcheggiani, and I'm a naturopathic doctor in Bloor West Village in Toronto. Bye.